Hey there. Ever feel like you're crushing it at something, but deep down it just doesn't light you up? You know what I mean? You're good at it, maybe even great. People praise you for it, but something still feels off. Well, today we're diving into something that might just change your whole perspective on success and fulfillment. We're talking about the difference between your zone of excellence and your zone of genius. You see, I used to think being really good at something was enough. I mean, isn't that what we're all taught? Get good at something, become successful, you'll be happy, right? But here's the thing, and I'm learning this the hard way. Being excellent at something doesn't automatically mean it's your true calling. Think about it. How many people do you know who are absolutely crushing it in their careers but still feel like something's missing? That's because they're stuck in their zone of excellence, when their zone of genius is calling them for something bigger. In today's episode, we're going to break down exactly what these zones mean, why so many of us get comfortable in excellence when genius is waiting for us, and most importantly, how to make that leap. Trust me, this conversation might just be the wake-up call you've been waiting for. So grab your coffee, find a quiet spot, and let's dive into this week's topic of the week. Welcome to this week's episode of Tough Coffee Shop Talk. I'm your host, Rhonda Lavoie. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. Each week, I meet with my members from Tough Collaborative to chat about varying topics, and each week you can join me here as I review that topic of the week. We have a wide range of topics discussing anything from business building tips to personal development ideas. And the best part is, I feel these topics can touch anybody, no matter what their adventure is in life. If you're self-employed, entrepreneur, work in a corporation, stay-at-home parent, retired, or in between jobs, I think there's just a little bit for everyone. So I'd like to dive right in. Let's get to this week's conversation of the week. This week's topic actually became popular because of Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. I have not finished this book. I have picked it up recently and I'm working through it, but I haven't actually gotten all the way through. But when you do any research on zone of excellence and zone of genius, his book, The Big Leap, is actually one that is noted quite frequently as having this conversation. So if you're interested in it, check out that book. I'd love to hear if you're reading it because I'm in the middle of that right now and would love to compare notes. So yeah, check it out. Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap. I'd like to take you back to 2010, 2011. This is a point in my life where I'm working a very successful position at a corporation here in Saskatoon in IT. I'm good at what I do. I've been doing it for a while. I'm respected by my peers. I'm, improving my craft. I'm working, doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing to ensure that I had a successful career and ultimately a successful and happy life. But have you ever had that feeling like there's something more and that you just don't feel fulfilled, even though you're checking all the boxes, doing all the things just the right way, the way that you thought they were supposed to be done, but you're bored stiff and you don't want to go to work in the morning? Have you ever felt like that? Maybe you feel like that. On Sunday night, you're dreading Monday morning, or you're at the office watching the clock for the day to go by. Everything looks like you're supposed to be doing what you're doing, or you're achieving all the things that you're supposed to be doing, but you just feel like handcuffed because it's not fulfilling you. Well, that's where I was. Again, I was successful. I was respected. I had all of the boxes checked. I had the good income. I had benefits. I had a retirement plan. I had all of the things, you guys. But I hated it. I was so bored and distracted and unfulfilled in what I was doing. I hated it. And I really, at the time, couldn't tell you exactly what of it that I hated. It wasn't a specific thing. It was more like a void or a vacant feeling because it just didn't satisfy me. And I now know, 11 years later, that I was stuck in my zone of excellence. Because your zone of excellence is a place where, you might be very good at it. You might make really good money doing what you're doing. You might actually even be comfortable. But you're not fulfilled. And I now know that I can actually have all of those things. Like, you don't just have to be good at what you do and go through the motions and get the paycheck and do that day in and day out. You can actually do something that you really, really love, and you can do it really, really well and still make a living. So we're talking about the difference between zone of excellence and zone of genius. And don't get me wrong, they both have value, because I couldn't have gotten to where I am today without going through my zone of excellence and learning all those things that I am good at. And I'm not saying that you're going to discard the things that you're good at and your excellence, because often your excellence can become your genius. So as an example, you might have a corporate lawyer. Their excellence is they're highly skilled at contracts, they have a good salary, they're respected position, but their genius is they're a natural mediator who thrives on conflict resolution and bringing people together. So they can lean into that. Or a software developer, this is probably a good example, writes clean code, meets deadlines, reliable team member, but their genius is they create intuitive user experiences that transform how people interact with technology. Now, I was not a coder, so don't take that way. For me, my excellence was the management of projects, the gathering of people, the helping people shine at what they're good at. All of those are the things that I did in my IT job. And now I lean into that because I love to teach people. I love to help people understand, where they can shine, the things that they're good at, and, lifting people up and helping them go in the right direction in life. So my excellence ultimately leans into my genius. But when you're in your excellence, you sometimes get lost in the let's just say the transactional piece of it and the climbing the ladder and the grind, where you're like, okay, well, I have to, get through this project so I can get to the next project. That's where I was at. It's it's one project into another, but I didn't really lean into what within that project was what filled my cup. What was it about that? And now I really lean into that because I've learned that my area of genius, or my zone of genius, is more about the people than the project. Does that make sense? I hope so. Makes sense in my head. So let's explore a little bit more about how to identify your zone of genius so that you can determine how to kind of lean into that. Some things to think about, some questions for you. What did you love doing as a child? What activities make you lose track of time? What do people consistently compliment you on? What unique perspectives do you bring to problems? What energizes you rather than drains you? And what would you do even if you weren't paid? And this one's a fun one. So for me, back to how I'm, leaning into this genius of mine, this zone of genius, is the people. So my cup gets filled, or my energy cup gets filled when I'm around people. And when I'm interacting and listening and growing with people. And I've learned this, but if I would have sat, just been still for a while and really listened to myself back 11 years ago, I would have figured that out a little bit sooner, that people were really what I loved about what I did and really what I leaned into when I was interacting with my day-to-day job. And it's certainly easy for me to lose track time when I'm in that. Just ask anybody who goes for coffee with me, because often they're a 2-hour coffee date. Anyway, so lean into those things. Think about those and see, what might be your area of genius so that you can start to lean into that. And I want to give you a couple of strategies on how to start kind of making that transition from your zone of excellence to your zone of genius. So for me, because I didn't understand any of this back 11 years ago, it was kind of almost a cold turkey situation. I became a real estate agent back in 2013, I guess, is when I got when I actually got licensed. But I was, of course, going through all the courses and everything in 2012. And I, at that point, had decided that I needed this change. I didn't understand, where I should be going, but real estate was, what attracted me. So kind of a big shift. And for me, I actually did go part-time real estate while I was still working in my corporate job, but I was also building a house. So it was very strategic and it was very chaotic. I'm not gonna lie, and not really how I would recommend to do things, but I often do things this way. I do like to have a lot going on. It seems to energize me as well to have lots of activity. And, if I really think about it, it comes back to the people, because when I have lots of activity, I'm around a lot of people. But anyway, I digress. I don't recommend doing the cold turkey, pull the plug situation unless you're that person, that type of person. So I would like to give you some strategies so that you don't have to do it that way. So my strategy would be just start with 30 minutes a day in your genius, and it can be a bit of a side hustle. It could be something that you even just journal about and brainstorm and dream and visualize. But just take a little bit of time each day to really sit in what your genius is, and document when you feel most energized. This is huge. When are you feeling like you have been energized by something, or when is it draining? And then, of course, build skills that support your genius. So for me, my skill building is in all the personal development stuff that I do. I read a ton. I listen to a lot of podcasts. All of that energizes me and helps me just lean into this stuff a little bit more. You might want to create a financial transition plan, because this is huge, because a lot of the reasons many of us get stuck in that zone of excellence is because it pays the bills. That's the plain truth of it. When I, hesitated to leave my corporate job, it was a very good income and it was very stable. And, I'll be honest, there's days even to today that I miss that piece of it. So coming up with some sort of financial plan, that transition, will certainly help ease that pain for you. Find some mentors who've made this type of shift before. And your mentor doesn't even have to be local, and you don't even necessarily have to pay for them. You can have mentors through podcasts, as an example, something like this. You can listen to somebody that that resonates with you and who has maybe gone through some of the things that you're hoping to go through, and just listen to their podcasts or read their books. There can be online courses, there can be Facebook groups. There's all sorts of areas where you can connect with a mentor who will help you through these things. And then test your genius work in low risk ways. So like for me with people, it could be something like hosting a networking event, very little financial amount to put in. The time that it takes should be pretty minimal, and the risk of success and failure are, pretty neutral, but it will help me, step outside the box a little bit. So let's switch gears a little bit now. I'd like to talk about kind of where some of these challenges come from So one of the big ones for you might be that success has been defined by financial gain. It has been by stature or even job title. And these are all societal pressures that we've created. And just because you achieve those things, and I talked about this earlier, doesn't necessarily mean you will be happy. So societal success doesn't necessarily equal personal happiness. And many people go through life striving for success, that societal example or definition of success. And they will achieve that and not understand why they don't feel happy. And I think these things connect to this zone of excellence and zone of genius. Now, I'll be honest, I think it connects to a lot of things, but as part of it, I believe it connects to this. Because we'll go through this zone of excellence and the act of doing the things that we're good at, because it will get us to the definition of success. However, we don't love doing it, which means that we remove ourselves from that happy place. And ultimately, when we get there, we just feel the same as we did the day before. We feel like we did the things, we got to the summit. However, we are not satisfied or happy or feeling fulfilled. However, I think if we can dive into that zone of genius where it just becomes a bit bigger than us, in a sense, where while we're doing it, we're just happier than when we were doing our excellence piece. And if we can do everything that we want to do and get to that success, that even still that societal example of success, when we get there, we'll have some sense of pride and happiness, because getting there, the whole journey to get there, was just a happier experience than going through your excellence. Does that make sense? So one of the things that really holds us back is that we don't want to stray from that definition of success. Because when you can go into your zone of genius, it's going to look different than your zone of excellence, because your climb to the summit is going to be different, because you're actually embracing a different thing. You're embracing a piece of happiness and a piece of personal success, personal growth, where with your zone of excellence, you will be doing the things that are expected of you to be successful. They're very different. So this is often one of the things that holds us back. It's that obstacle, because we're fearful of going outside the norm. We're fearful of not trying to be successful the way society or our families or our friends have defined success, and finding our own success with our zone of genius. Of course, some of the other obstacles that come with this fear is also like the fear of starting over, the fear of the financial instability, fear of even just making it happen. It's unknown. It's all of the things. Fear of, imposter syndrome. Identifying yourself with the role that you're currently in instead of trying to, realign your identity with something else. It's all things that can hold you back. So these are all obstacles that you need to work through mentally and emotionally so that you can take that first step. And again, making a shift is not simple. When I decided to quit my very good corporate job and go into real estate, it wasn't done willy-nilly. However, it was crucial for me and my happiness at the time. So making that shift at that point was important, but scary. I was at the time of going through my exams, I was pregnant. We were looking at building a house. There was so many other things in my life that we needed to focus on. However, I knew deep down that I needed to do something differently. So if you feel like that a little bit, I encourage you to lean into this zone of genius and really take some time to think it through. And if you make the shift, you're going to start benefiting your life honestly immediately, because I believe that you'll start to see an increase in your energy. You'll have better work-life integrity. You'll certainly have the higher earning potential long term. It may suffer initially, but long term, that potential is there. You'll have way more authentic relationships because you will be in a different place. You'll have a greater impact on others, and sustainable success, because showing up to a job that you're good at but hate is much, for long term, is much harder to do than showing up to a job or a career that you're good at and love. And that's my hope for you, is that if you're in that job you're good at but really don't love, I hope that you'll be able to find your genius so that you can create a job or a career that you're good at and love. And that wraps up our deep dive into zone of excellence versus zone of genius. I hope this episode has inspired you to reflect on where you're currently operating and what your true genius might be calling you to do. Remember, while the zone of excellence is comfortable and rewarding, your zone of genius is where true fulfillment and extraordinary impact await. Take that first step today and identify one small way you can lean into your unique gift. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your journey and insights. Reach out to me on Instagram at @RhondaLavoie_tough, so TUF, or follow me on Facebook at Rhonda Lavoie. For those of you interested in diving deeper into personal development and transformation, visit toughinstitute.com to learn about our membership program. And if you're in the Saskatoon area and looking for real estate guidance, just Google Rhonda Lavoie eXp Realty and you'll find my website. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode about unlocking your full potential. Thank you for sharing this time with me today. Until next week, keep pushing beyond excellence and stepping boldly into your genius.